Okay, so you're having a problem with your supply valve. Maybe it's sticky, maybe you haven't been able to get it to turn off, maybe it's got a leak either at the back or out of the handle. Now some supply valves can be rebuilt and it's not really a big deal, but the truth is a supply valve costs about $5 and it's fairly simple to replace. Even the more expensive ones that are really, really convenient are still only a few dollars more. So the cost of trying to rebuild one and deal with it is usually not worth it when you could just replace it. Now, we're going to assume that you have either PEX or copper. If you have galvanized, they make supply line replacements obviously for those that are just threaded and they'll screw right on there. But for the sake of copper, you have a couple of choices. You can see these supply valves are what's called a quarter turn to turn it on or off. They're very convenient. The vast majority of supply valves that are already out there installed in homes take multiple turns to either turn them on and off. Anytime I'm replacing them, I usually install a quarter turn just for convenience sake. So what you want to do is turn off the water so you don't blow water all over your kitchen. Whether you can do that at your hot water heater or whether you need to go out to the street using a street key and turn it off at the water meter, make sure it's off. Turn on the faucet to relieve any pressure you might have here, and then you're ready to remove the supply line. The supply line comes off right here with an adjustable wrench, pretty simply. There's going to be some water that's still probably going to drain out of this hose, so maybe have something available to catch that. And now, to remove that supply line, you're going to need two wrenches. One will grab the body of the valve, and the other will turn this compression nut on the back. When I've got it off in my hands, I'll show it to you and make sure it makes sense how it works. So, that one's ready. Just by turning this nut, you can get it loose. And it'll pull right off the copper. Now, in order to do a thorough replacement, you need to replace both the compression nut and the ferrule. The ferrule can be kind of tricky to get off sometimes, and occasionally you'll find that if the copper is long enough, you may even have to cut the pipe off behind the ferrule in order to get it off. But either way, these compression fittings work very simply because they do exactly what they say they do. They compress that ferrule up against the valve, and they essentially crimp it down onto the copper to seal. Now this is why, unlike most of the things you've tightened throughout this series, I've told you to get it tight but not crazy tight. These can be crazy tight. The compression factor really helps. It's something that you almost can't over tighten. As long as you're holding the valve still while you're tightening this, everything should be good. Now, as an alternative to a compression type fitting, you might consider using a shark bite valve. They come in different formations, different types of assemblies. They have different ends on them depending on the end of your supply valve. This is a 3/8 compression end that's real common. It's the same as the end we're using on our supply valves. And right here on the supply valve is the section that's actually the shark bite section. And if you're not already familiar with shark bites, they are essentially a slip-fit mechanical connection, like so. You make sure they are pressed on as far as they will go. And even though the valve will spin, that's okay. It'll still seal fabulously there. Now, this particular model, once it's in place, you need to slide in this little lock ring. That's because if that lock ring is not in place, or for instance, if you need to remove the valve for some reason, you simply pull the lock ring out, pull back on that sleeve while moving the supply line, and you can remove it fairly easily. If we were going to use a shark bite for this, we'd be done already. They're fabulous and only a few dollars more. Now, your new supply valve will come with a fitting and a compression fitting up here for plastic tubing. You're going to remove and discard that or save it if you'd like. I've got quite a big pile of them, thinking sooner or later I'll use them, but you never know. Our supply lines don't require that sort of fitting, and the best of them don't, so you should be good there. You're simply going to slide the compression nut over the copper, slide the ferrule in place as well, Slide the valve body as far as it'll go. Tighten the nut. Switch to 2 wrenches that are sized appropriately for the body of the valve, like that one, and the nut, and just get it good and tight. Like I said, because it is a compression type fitting, you can get it nice and tight. That's fine. At that point, you're ready for a supply line. Screw it back on, and if it is this same type that has a little rubber seal inside, you want to be careful not to just totally smash it on there. It's putting up a fight. Oh no, you're going to go on. Oh, there is no choice here. You're going on. There it is. Okay, good. I normally go finger tight, and then I just snug it up a small amount with the wrench, just enough to let it know we were serious. Then you should be good to go. You go back out to the street or to your water heater, wherever it is you had to turn it off. Turn the water back on. Make sure your faucet is off. Turn this valve back on, and then turn the faucet on. Check for operation. Make sure it's working good. Make sure there's no leaks either at the back of the valve where the compression fitting is or where the supply line screws on. Even at the handle, just to make sure it didn't have some sort of factory defect. And you should be good to go. It's the same basic principle behind any supply valve, whether it's a toilet, bathroom sink, or a kitchen sink. The supply valves, it might come off straight. The supply line hose attachment might come off straight off the end instead of at a 90-degree angle like this. But they're all the same installation and removal principles. So go get that supply line fixed.